He said it straight. No emotion. No hesitation. I'm filing for full custody. For a moment, Jasmine didn't move. She didn't speak. She just blinked like she hadn't heard him right. Then her body folded, not slowly, but like her legs had given out all at once. She dropped to the floor, one hand grabbing his leg, the other clutching her stomach like she'd been punched there. Her face? Shattered, like her whole heart had cracked down the middle. And Matt didn't flinch. He didn't kneel. He didn't comfort her. He stood silent, while the woman he once fought to bring across an ocean, the woman who gave birth to his daughter, begged him not to take that child away. This wasn't a fight about love anymore. This was survival mode. Welcome to 90 Days Scoop US. I'm Oliva. If this is your kind of madness, hit that subscribe button because we cover the messy moments they don't air. And I need to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Matt ever really saw Jasmine as permanent? Because tonight's story isn't just about a breakup. It's about what happens after the cameras stop rolling. When one parent walks out with a suitcase, and the other is left whispering apologies into a baby blanket. Jasmine's whole body was shaking as she cried, "You're taking my baby?" She wasn't yelling. This was no dramatic scene for the producers. This was pain that made her numb. And instead of backtracking or softening, Matt hit her with a single sentence that made producers question whether to even keep filming. She deserves stability. That line. Cold. Calculated. Chosen. And Jasmine, already broken, gasped like she'd just lost oxygen. This wasn't about a fight. This wasn't about Gino. This wasn't even about them anymore. She realized, in that second, Matt wasn't having a moment. He had made up his mind. And then, the words came out again. Lower this time, I will die without her. That's what Jasmine said, clinging to the leg of someone who once called her his person. Now let's be honest. A lot of relationships on this show spiral. But custody? That's a whole different storm. And what sends a man from couples counseling to full custody court threats in under a month? Especially when, just weeks before, Matt was smiling on set, telling the camera Jasmine was the one who made him feel seen? Because if this wasn't sudden, then what signs did we all miss? And more importantly, what signs did Jasmine ignore? We're about to trace Matt's silence, Jasmine's fear, and the exact moment this breakup became a custody war disguised as heartbreak. Before the custody bomb, before the tears on hotel carpet, there was something that almost looked like peace. For a minute, they had everyone fooled. Matt would hold Matilda like a pro. Jasmine posed for filtered baby updates, tiny bows and pastel onesies. The captions were full of blessings and new beginnings, but behind the scenes, it was already leaking. Not loud, just little splits in the silence. After Jasmine left Panama, she poured everything into the idea of family. Back home, people had warned her. Don't trust an American man who says forever too fast. She didn't listen. He was kind. He was stable. He said all the words she ached to believe. When Matt met her at the airport, that final time before she immigrated, he held her hand and whispered, "You're home now." That sentence carried her through months of fear, through labor, through postpartum spirals where she'd cry at 3 a.m., rocking Matilda with one arm, and checking if her visa paperwork still meant she'd be legal if Matt left. And to the outside world, it seemed like they were doing okay. They laughed, they filmed, they tried to co-parent like people who hadn't broken each other, in small invisible ways. There were no giant fights, but the quiet was heavier than any screaming. Matt would sit at the edge of their couch scrolling, headphones always in. Jasmine would pretend she wasn't watching his every facial movement, trying to decode it like a survival test. He was there, but not present. There was one moment in particular that fans missed. A throwaway scene in the background of an episode. Jasmine leans in to kiss Matt while he's holding the baby. He pulls away like he doesn't notice. She laughs it off. Producers moved on. But that moment wasn't nothing. To her, that rejection felt like poison. One missed kiss. One avoided glance. Dozens of unspoken reminders that something felt off. After Matilda was born, Jasmine's need for comfort grew louder. Not dramatic, not needy, just real. A mother who never had one. A woman who kept getting almost chosen. She wanted reassurance. Not from Instagram followers. From him. But Matt wasn't raised to give that. Emotion, in his house, was weakness. He provided. He thought that was enough. Rent was paid, car seat was installed, formula was stocked. What else could she possibly need? They didn't argue. They didn't connect, either. She once asked him why he stopped holding her in bed. He mumbled something about being tired. But she didn't believe it. Her chest told her a different story. That he'd already started shutting the door in his mind. Sometimes peace isn't peace. It's detachment wrapped in polite silence. And what if the dream they built was always cracked before it began? Because behind Jasmine's eyes was a worry she could never say out loud. What if I built my second chance on someone who's already halfway out the door? She tried anyway. She held on harder. Loved louder. But the warning signs never went quiet. And one, in particular, would change everything. It came out of someone else's mouth. Someone Matt never thought would repeat what he said. He said it over drinks. Like it meant nothing. To Andre, one of their only couple friends, Matt casually dropped a line that turned Jasmine's world sideways. Sometimes I feel like this relationship has an expiration date. He didn't mean for it to get back to her. Or maybe he did. But Andre told Julia. And Julia told Jasmine. Softly. Like breaking bad news about a relative who wasn't going to make it. Jasmine didn't respond at first. She nodded once, stiff, then stood up and walked into the bedroom. No tears. No sound. She didn't sleep that night. She just sat on the edge of the crib, watching Matilda breathe, rocking slowly like she was trying not to fall apart from the inside out. An expiration date. Not a fight. Not a break. A deadline. It wasn't anger she felt. It was betrayal wrapped in numbness, because all this time, she thought they were fixing things. Surviving the newborn phase. Adjusting. She clung to every small moment of peace as proof. The diaper change without complaint. The Sunday morning coffee run. The quiet smile when Matilda giggled. She thought those were signs they were healing. But if he said that, then maybe he wasn't trying at all. Maybe Matt had mentally packed his bags a long time ago. That sentence didn't just hurt, it rewrote the past. Suddenly, every pause Matt took before answering her felt like calculation. Every "I'm fine" became a lie. Every time he walked out for a late-night errand and came back colder felt like planned detachment. And after that, Jasmine stopped trying to explain herself. She wouldn't say what she needed anymore. She just stopped talking. Matt noticed, tried to brush it off. But it got quieter. Jasmine stopped asking about his day. She stopped reassuring him when he looked stressed. She'd still make dinner, still fold his clothes, still tuck Matilda's blanket under her chin, just right. But her presence? It became like furniture, functional, silent, exhausted. And the scariest part? Matt didn't seem to mind. In her old relationship with Gino, the fights were explosive, messy, humiliating. But at least she knew where they stood. This was different. This was dead air. No spark, no scream. Just cold detachment. Then came the night when Jasmine looked him in the eyes and asked, "Do you still love me?" He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just said, "Don't be dramatic," and walked out the door. She stared at it close for over an hour. Matilda sleeping in the next room. She didn't touch her phone. Didn't cry. That night, love didn't break her. Indifference did. One sentence did what 100 fights couldn't. It broke something inside her. And the question she buried deep inside her chest refused to stay quiet anymore. Did Matt actually want out long before Jasmine realized? She didn't mean to say it on camera. It slipped out in a moment of quiet collapse while talking to Julia. Her voice cracked when she said, Matt's mom already picked someone else for him. Julia thought she misheard, but Jasmine repeated it, slower this time. She said, if I can't marry him, someone else will. It wasn't a rumor. It was a direct quote. And Jasmine had been carrying it alone for weeks. At first, she didn't believe the mother-in-law meant it seriously. But then came the slow campaign. Little hints. Closed-off smiles. That passive-aggressive warmth that pretends to be concern, but cuts like critique. Suddenly, Jasmine's accent became a barrier. Her tears became emotional instability. Her questions about Matilda's school years down the line were labeled too intense. And when she overheard Matt's mom on the phone complimenting another woman, she's so calm, so grounded. The kind of girl who fits right in with our family? Jasmine didn't need a name. She already knew what this was. Someone had already been selected as the safety net. You can't compete with a ghost girlfriend your partner's whole family already prefers. And Matt? He never stepped in. Not once. Not when Jasmine told him she felt uncomfortable. Not when she asked if his mom ever really supported their engagement. Not even when she begged him to make it clear she was his first and only choice. He shrugged it off. My mom just wants what's best for me. That line stayed lodged like a knife in Jasmine's throat. Because Jasmine knew what it sounded like when judgment came wrapped in America's polite smiles. She felt it more here than she ever had back home, especially as a mother, with a complicated past, an accent, and a name that didn't fit in with Matt's country club family photos. They'd say things like, "You're so passionate," when what they meant was, "You're too much." Make side comments about how parenting should be routine, not emotional. Suggest getting someone to help with the baby. Because Jasmine seemed overwhelmed. There were no outright insults. But the pressure was constant. And the silence from Matt? That hurt more than any insult could. Because when silence starts to sound like approval, doubt becomes dangerous. Every day, Jasmine tried harder to be easy, acceptable, manageable, but her fear of being replaced grew louder than her trust in the relationship. Until it reached a point where she asked herself something terrifying. If his family never wanted me here, if they're already building Plan B, then how long has Matt been pretending I'm still part of Plan A? She started noticing missing pieces in the way he talked. Half answers. Vague, I had to meet someone for work statements. Text notifications he slid into his pocket instead of reading. And once fear opens that door, it doesn't close easily. Was Matt hiding more than Jasmine thought? It fell out while she was folding his jeans. A small, torn piece of paper. No label, no context. Just a name Jasmine didn't recognize, written in Matt's handwriting with a phone number. She stared at it for almost a full minute before picking it up. Her hands were shaking like it might burn her just to touch it. She wasn't snooping. She wasn't looking for proof. But that paper felt louder than any confession. For a woman already questioning her place in the life she gave up everything to build, this was a stab. She didn't call the number. She didn't Google it. She just sat on the floor with the note in her hand, whispering every old fear she thought she'd buried back in Panama. What if I'm too much again? What if I'm being replaced again? What if he already left the relationship and forgot to tell me? She looked at Matilda sleeping nearby and burst into silent tears. The kind that lock in your throat and come out without sound. She pressed the paper to her forehead, like maybe doing that would answer the question screaming in her head. Who is she? But Jasmine didn't come out swinging. When Matt came home later that night, she greeted him as usual. Quiet, careful, watching. She waited until Matilda was asleep, then walked over to where he sat scrolling, and placed a scrap of paper on the table in front of him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who's this?" Matt didn't flinch, didn't grab the paper, didn't react like someone caught. Instead, he sighed. That long, exhausted kind of sigh that speaks more than words but answers nothing. He said it was work-related, that she was a contact from a meeting, that Jasmine was reading into it. And then, that word again, dramatic. He said she was being emotional, like her pain was something to roll his eyes at. Jasmine didn't scream. She didn't argue. But inside, her entire chest felt like it was caving in. Because Matt didn't lie in a sloppy, guilty way. He lied clean. Like someone who'd convinced himself the lie was mature. Practical. It wasn't the paper that shattered her. It was his calm. Because if the shoe were on the other foot, if she had a mystery number hidden in her jeans, Matt would have flipped. But watching him dismiss her hurt like an inconvenience? That was the kind of emotional neglect that doesn't bruise the skin, but leaves marks anyway. Sometimes it's not betrayal, it's the fear of wondering if you're being betrayed. And Jasmine had officially left denial. She didn't throw the paper. She tucked it into her phone case. Not to use it, but to remind herself she wasn't crazy for needing clarity. Then, one night, as she walked down the hallway after putting Matilda to sleep, she paused outside the bedroom and heard something that stopped her cold. It was Matt, on the phone. His voice was low, serious, tired. What Jasmine heard next made her question everything. She was already pale when the door closed behind him. The baby blanket in her lap was soaked with silent tears. Jasmine had been crying for hours, but the kind that made no sound, just left her face raw, her hands clenched. She didn't look up right away when Matt walked into the hotel room. She didn't ask him anything. She didn't scream. She didn't move. He sat down across from her like they were there for a mediation, not a goodbye. Phone off. Eyes down, sleeve tugged straight like he was nervous, but trying to seem in control. Then came the sentence. Simple. Cold. "I can't do this anymore, Jazz." It was a line she thought she was bracing for, but when it hit in real time, it cut deeper than she ever rehearsed for. Still, she didn't raise her voice. She just stared at him, blinking, breath catching, like her chest was trying to catch up. Then, she asked one question, half whisper, half wound. "Is there someone else?" He shook his head. Too fast. Too practiced. "No. It's not that. It's the arguing. The distrust. The instability. I can't raise a daughter in this environment." Her eyes flinched. "Not our daughter. A daughter." The distance in his language confirmed what her gut had already told her. He had already stepped out of this relationship long before saying it out loud. Jasmine didn't challenge it. She didn't deny there were problems. She only asked for honesty. "You've been preparing to replace me." Matt looked up finally. His face didn't hold anger. It held something worse. Resignation. "I've been preparing for peace." That sentence stole her breath. Jasmine wrapped her arms around her body like she was trying to hold herself together from the outside. The room felt like it was shrinking, like her life was being vacuumed out of it second by second. Finally, she broke. She slid off the chair onto the floor. Not like drama, like collapse. "I gave up everything for you." No answer. "I left my family. I left my country. I left the only man who ever loved me. Because I thought you would love me better." The tears were quiet now, but her body was shaking so hard she had to grip the base of the bed to stay upright. "I have nothing left." And Matt still didn't go to her. No arms. No comfort. He didn't even flinch when she said she felt like she was dying. Then came the blow. Without changing tone, without warning, Matt looked dead at her and said it. "I'm filing for full custody." Jasmine's sob cut off mid-breath. She stared like the words had punched the oxygen from her lungs. You're taking Matilda? You're taking my baby? He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He didn't even look cruel. He said it like he was ordering coffee. She deserves stability. There it was again. Not we deserve to parent her. Not you and I need to fix this. Just she. And stability. And him believing Jasmine no longer qualified as part of that package. This wasn't a breakup. It was an erasure. Jasmine reached for his leg, sobbing, begging, desperate for anything but that. I will die without her. She wasn't being performative. She meant it. This wasn't a custody threat. This was survival fear. One of the producers stepped in. The shot had gone too far. But Matt stood still, hands in pockets, jaw tight. Even the crew couldn't believe how calm he was. The question nobody dared ask out loud now hung in the air like smoke. Was Matt pulling away? Because of Matilda? The door clicked shut, but it echoed like an earthquake. Jasmine was alone in the hotel room, knees pressed to the carpet, fingers digging into Matilda's pink baby blanket like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. Outside, it was just an ordinary day. But here, in this room, something unfixable had snapped. No camera angle could soften it. No edit could make this moment digestible. She pressed her face into the tiny fabric, as if maybe it still held Matilda's scent. Her body shook without sound. Crying had passed. Now it was something deeper. The emptiness after loss, the silence after everything is said, but nothing is heard. And somewhere in that silence, her mind wandered. Back to the moment she walked away from her own mother at the Panama airport. Back to leaving her friends, her job, her language, her currency, her culture. She didn't come to America for luxury. She came for love. Stability, a second chance for the little girl she once was, now reborn in the form of her newborn child. She thought if she gave everything, she could build something permanent. But she forgot one rule. If the foundation doesn't love you back, sacrifice becomes self-erasure. Rocking back and forth with that blanket clutched tight, she whispered it. I'm sorry, mi amor. Mommy tried. She didn't know if Matilda would ever hear those words one day. But she said them anyway. Because now she wasn't just surviving heartbreak. She was treading water in the dark, holding a promise she had once made to herself. You came to build. You will not be broken. Then, everything twisted. While Jasmine was still in tears backstage, producers pulled Matt aside for a sit-down. He wasn't crying, barely looked ruffled, which made what he said next even colder. She still talks to Gino. The interview crew froze. She told me she was done with him, Matt continued, but I've seen her cry about him. Compare me to him. She hides messages, still reacts whenever his name comes up. It was a gut punch. Not because fans hadn't seen Jasmine's past with Gino, but because the timing now made it feel like justification. Matt, the guy who had barely reacted to Jasmine breaking on the floor minutes earlier, now wanted the world to know this wasn't all me. And suddenly, sympathy paused. Because if Jasmine was still living in the shadow of her ex, even emotionally, was Matt totally wrong for feeling second string? But that's where it gets messy. Maybe neither one of them was lying. Jasmine did carry trauma. Gino shattered her, and she spent every minute trying to prove she was enough for someone new. But could she really have healed without slipping up? Without flinching at old ghosts? Matt interpreted her scars as proof she wasn't ready. But Jasmine viewed his coldness as proof he didn't want to understand. And now their daughter, barely old enough to babble, was caught in the aftermath. It started with a blanket on a hotel floor. It ended with a custodial threat on public record. But somewhere between the accusations and the silence, Jasmine made a quiet decision. No one's taking my child without a fight. Her words. Off camera. Caught on crew audio later that day, whispered in exhausted Spanish while she redid her makeup. Even broken, she was rising. There was no legal team yet, no court order, no custody paperwork. But her mind had already switched into defense mode. She packed Matilda's things at night without knowing what next week would look like. Still wearing the same hoodie, mascara streaked down both cheeks, face pale like the life had been drained out of it. But her spine straightened. This was the same Jasmine who had survived emotional chaos, racial prejudice, immigration red tape, and late-night panic attacks with Matilda in her arms. There was still fire in her, even if it flickered now at half the flame. She called her sister the next morning, asked about lawyers in Panama. Quiet, deliberate moves. No show, no shouting. Because when a woman realizes she's not crying for a man anymore, but for the threat of losing her child, something rewires itself. Jasmine didn't win that night. She didn't gain ground. But she refused to disappear. And if you thought Matt's story ended here, wait until you see who he was allegedly texting 1 week later.